It started with the hum of a perfectly tuned V8 and a plastic cup of gas station coffee. That's how I met Eli, standing under the sweltering Florida sun at a Sunday morning car meetup in a half-abandoned strip mall parking lot outside Tampa. I wasn't even supposed to be there. My buddy bailed last minute, and I was left debating whether to just head home or see if the 240 SX guys had actually shown up this time. I'd recently swapped out my turbo setup and was itching to show it off. Not to impress, just to finally see some reaction other than my own in the garage mirror. That's when I spotted the 72 Chevelle SS, flawless blue paint, original trim, and a rumble that made you feel it in your chest. I'm a JDM guy, but damn, I had to go over. He was crouched beside the front wheel, wiping off brake dust with a rag that looked older than the car. Dirty blonde curls peeked out from under his cap, his forearms tan and lean, marked with the kind of subtle grease stains you only get from real wrench time. "Original or swapped?" I asked, nodding at the hood. He looked up, grinned. "Swapped. LS3. But I kept it pretty true to the original outside. Gotta piss off the purists a little, you know?" I laughed. "Yeah, I get that. I dropped a 2JZ into my S13. I like when people get mad before they get impressed." That's how we started. Eli was his name. 30, like me. Born and raised in Clearwater, but had spent the last 8 years in Georgia before moving back recently to help his mom after her surgery. His voice had a calm steadiness to it, like he didn't rush unless he had a good reason to. We spent most of the morning circling each other's rides. He asked the kind of questions that told me he actually knew what he was talking about, not just parroting TikTok lingo like some guys do. And when he looked at me, it wasn't like he was just checking out the car. That first meeting ended with a lazy walk back to our cars and an exchange number. I told myself it was just about the cars, just another local car guy I'd wrench with. Maybe grab a beer. But by Tuesday, I was texting him photos from my garage, and by Thursday night, we were shoulder to shoulder, installing his new COI levers under a flickering shop light. We clicked, not just about cars, about music, about how Florida sunsets make you feel nostalgic for something you haven't even lost, about exes and jobs, and how neither of us ever really figured out how to live like adults. And then there was this one moment. It was almost midnight. I had just passed him a socket wrench, and he brushed my hand as he took it. Just a moment of skin on skin. But it lingered, and he didn't pull away quickly. Neither did I. We locked eyes under the open hood of his Chevelle. Nothing was said. Nothing needed to be. There was something there. Some charge that wasn't just from the torque wrench or the horsepower we both worshipped. Still, nothing happened that night. Not yet. We didn't talk about that moment under the hood. Maybe it meant nothing. Maybe it meant everything. Either way, I wasn't going to be the one to make it weird. So I played it cool. When Eli texted the next night, it was short and simple. "You hungry?" I stared at the screen for a second. It was 9:14 p.m. "Always," I replied. "You buying?" "Damn right. I owe you for those busted knuckles." He picked me up in the Chevelle. The sound of it turning the corner outside my place sent a shiver down my spine. I don't care how many times you hear a properly tuned engine, it never stops being sexy. "Where we headed?" I asked as I slid into the passenger seat. "Nowhere fancy. I know a Cuban joint that's open late." We cruised along Gulf to Bay with the windows down. The night air was thick but bearable, and the warm scent of salt water mixed with exhaust as we passed the causeway. Eli had one hand on the wheel, the other casually draped on the window frame. He looked relaxed. Or maybe just content. "You good?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, eyes still on the road. "I like this. Driving, talking, not talking." We didn't say much for the next 10 minutes, but it wasn't awkward. That was the thing with Eli. He didn't fill silence with noise. He let it breathe. The Cuban spot was a hole in the wall near Clearwater Beach. Plastic chairs, handwritten signs, and the best damn ropa vieja I've ever had. We ate outside, elbows on the table, our knees occasionally brushing under the flimsy metal top. Afterward, neither of us seemed ready to call it a night. Back in the car, Eli looked over at me and said, "Want to go for a drive?" "Didn't we just do that?" He grinned. "I mean, a real one. No destination." I didn't hesitate. "Yeah, let's do it." We ended up heading north, taking the coastal back roads. The Chevelle purred beneath us, and the world outside turned into a blur of streetlights and palm shadows. At some point, Eli pulled off onto a service road near the water. He parked under a faded old billboard and turned off the engine. The sudden silence felt heavy after the rumble of the drive. "This where you dump the bodies?" I joked. He smirked but didn't say anything. Instead, he leaned back in his seat, eyes on the dark horizon. "My mom's doing better," he said after a while. "She's tough, but it's weird being back here. Everything feels smaller." "Yeah," I said. "I get that. I left for a reason too. Coming back kind of slaps you in the face with everything you ran from." We sat there, talking about family, about stupid high school regrets, about the weird in-between feeling of being 30 and still not knowing if you're actually doing life right. The kind of conversation that only happens after midnight with a little humidity and just enough quiet. Then it happened again. He turned to me, his knee brushing against mine, and this time he didn't move it away. "You ever think about—" He started, then trailed off. I looked at him. "About what?" He held my gaze. "Someone surprising you." My throat went dry. "What kind of surprise are we talking?" There was a pause. A long one, the kind that stretches into something you don't want to break. He reached over and gently tapped the side of my hand with his fingers. Just once, but it stayed there longer than necessary, and for the first time I saw something in his eyes that wasn't about cars or family or growing pains. It was something else. I didn't pull my hand away. I didn't say anything, either. Neither did he. We just sat there, in the dark cabin of the Chevelle, parked under a billboard for a law firm neither of us could remember ever seeing in daylight. The cicadas buzzed in the trees, and the occasional whoosh of a car passing on the highway was the only sign we weren't totally alone in the world. Eli didn't move. His fingers stayed right there, next to mine, not gripping, not nudging, just resting. And yet, it was the most electric touch I'd felt in years. Finally, I broke the silence. "So, you always this subtle?" He smirked. "I'm not good at subtle. That was me being terrified." "Of what?" He looked down at our hands, then back up at me. "Messing this up." There it was. No backpedaling. No, "nah bro" defense. Just honesty. I nodded, then let my pinky hook around his. That was it. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, just enough to say, "You're not imagining this." We sat like that for a while. Two grown-ass men in a classic car, touching hands like it was the most fragile thing in the world. Eventually, he started the engine again. No words, just the deep rumble filling the space between us. We didn't go far, just drove around aimlessly until we found ourselves at the top level of a mostly empty parking garage overlooking the marina. He parked, killed the engine, and rolled down both windows. The sound of water lapping at the dock carried up to us. "I used to come here when I was younger," he said. "Back when I didn't know what the hell I wanted." I raised an eyebrow. "And now?" He paused. "Still don't. But I think I know who I want to figure it out with." My heart did something weird then, like it skipped and doubled up at the same time. I turned toward him, my arm resting on the center console. "Eli," I said, quieter than I meant to, "are we gonna keep dancing around this, or—" He didn't let me finish. He leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to pull back. But I didn't. And when our lips met, it was soft. Careful. Like we were both testing if the ground would hold. It did. He kissed like he worked on cars. Focused, deliberate, not in a rush. And when he finally pulled back, he didn't say anything. Just rested his forehead against mine and let out a breath like he'd been holding it for years. "I didn't think I'd ever do that," he admitted. "Why now?" "Because you make it feel like I could." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nudged his shoulder with mine and let the silence fill in the gaps again. Eventually, we drove back to my place. I didn't ask him to come in. He didn't have to be asked. The Chevelle's engine echoed off the narrow alley behind my apartment as we pulled up. It was nearly 3 a.m., the air still thick and warm the way Florida nights always are in July. I unlocked the side door, and Eli followed me in without a word, both of us quiet, but not awkward quiet, intent quiet. I flicked on the kitchen light, and the buzz of the fluorescent bulb was louder than either of us expected. Eli winced. "Sorry," I muttered, switching it back off. "Didn't realize how brutal that thing was." He smirked. "Good. Mood lighting is better." We ended up in the garage. I know, not exactly romantic, but it's where I spent most of my time. My S13 sat in the corner, half stripped from a brake upgrade I'd started and abandoned earlier that week. "You're seriously working on this barefoot?" Eli asked, glancing at the parts scattered around. "Always," I said. "Adds danger." He laughed and leaned against my workbench, arms crossed, eyes on me like he was still trying to figure something out. I moved a few tools aside and sat on the edge of the bench next to him. "You sure about this?" I asked, quieter now. Eli didn't answer right away. He reached out, gently tugged at the hem of my shirt. Just a little. His knuckles brushed my skin, and something about that made my pulse jump. "I don't do things unless I'm sure," he said, looking right at me. "Even if it's different?" I asked, letting the sentence trail off. He nodded. "Especially then." He kissed me again, slower this time, with a little more weight behind it. My hands found his sides, warm and firm beneath his t-shirt, and for the first time all night, I stopped thinking. We stayed like that for a while. Just kissing, touching, leaning into each other like we'd both been waiting for this longer than we wanted to admit. It wasn't about rushing. It wasn't even about intimacy. It was about everything that had been building between us. The tension, the late-night texts, the way we instinctively moved in sync when wrenching on a car together. We made our way to the living room eventually, but it was all the same energy. Slow, intentional. Eli took his time. I did too. Later, he fell asleep on my couch, one arm across his chest, the other draped over the edge like he owned the place. I sat next to him for a while, watching him breathe, feeling that weird sense of calm that only shows up when something finally clicks. He looked so at home, sprawled out in my space, like it was his too. And maybe, just maybe, it could be. I didn't sleep much that night, but I didn't need to. Eli was still asleep on my couch when I got up, his arm flung over his eyes to block the morning light leaking through the blinds. I stood in the kitchen, sipping lukewarm coffee, watching him breathe like I had accidentally woken up in someone else's life. He looked peaceful, more relaxed than I'd ever seen him, even under a car. For a moment, I wondered if last night had been too much too fast. If he'd wake up, bolt upright, and say something like, "Hey, about last night," in that tone that means we're gonna pretend it didn't happen. But when he finally stirred, blinking blearily at the ceiling, he just stretched, scratched his chest and said, "You got anything to eat?" I laughed, relieved. "You slept with your shoes on and you're worried about breakfast?" I was emotionally exhausted, he said, grinning as he sat up. "And those cushions are, like, aggressively average." I'll add that to the Yelp review. We ate quietly. Scrambled eggs and a couple of sad-looking toaster waffles I fished out of the freezer. There was no tension, no awkwardness. It felt like a continuation, not an aftermath. "So," I said, sliding the syrup bottle across the table. "Are you good?" Eli looked at me mid-bite. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you don't have to act cool if you're not. Last night wasn't an accident," he interrupted, voice firm. I blinked. "Okay." He put his fork down and looked at me seriously. "I've thought about it. About you. I just never knew if it was mutual, or if I was reading into things. But last night didn't feel like a mistake." "It wasn't," I said, more certain than I expected. That was the moment. The shift. Everything after that felt like a new kind of rhythm. We spent the rest of the weekend in each other's space, working on the S13, swapping stories, stealing kisses like teenagers. It was easy, even when we didn't talk about what it meant yet. But of course reality doesn't stop just because something finally feels right. On Sunday afternoon, we were mid-oil change when his phone buzzed, an Atlanta area code. He stepped out to take it. I could tell by the way he didn't meet my eyes when he came back in that it wasn't a casual call. "What's up?" I asked, wiping grease off my hands. "My mom," he said, sighing. "Complication with her meds. Nothing critical, but she needs help this week. I gotta head back to Georgia." "When?" "Tonight." My stomach sank, but I nodded. "Yeah, of course." He stepped closer, oil-streaked and tired-looking. "I'll be back. Whatever this is, I'm not done." "You better not be," I said, trying to smile. He leaned in, kissed me slow and deep, like he needed me to remember it for however long he'd be gone. "I'll call," he said, resting his forehead against mine. "And when I get back, we finish that damn S13. I nodded, biting the inside of my cheek, and just like that, he was gone again. The days after Eli left felt longer than they should have. I kept busy, finishing the S13 project solo, trying to catch up on some freelance work, even reorganizing the tool rack in the garage. But everything I did felt slightly off, like something was missing, he texted. Not constantly, but enough. Photos of his mom's garden. A video of her dog snoring louder than humanly possible. Short messages like, "Thinking about that night," or "Still can't get over your reaction to my coilover joke." And I texted back. Sometimes longer than I should have. Sometimes too fast. But days turned into a week. Then almost 2. The night he finally called, I was half asleep on the couch, reruns of Top Gear droning in the background. "Hey," he said, his voice familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. "Hey," I replied, instantly more awake. "How's she doing?" "Better," he said. "Much better. I think I'll be able to head back by the weekend." I paused. "You sound off," he exhaled. "Yeah. I don't know. Being back here's weird. Like, I thought helping my mom would feel good, but now I'm just noticing how stuck I felt when I lived here. Same streets, same stores, same everything. It's like I can't breathe right here anymore." "I get that." "I've been thinking," he continued, "about what we started, about what it means. If I come back, I want to be back. Not just for a visit." My heart thudded. "You saying you want to move here?" "Yeah," he said, "if that's not too much." I couldn't help the small laugh that escaped. "Man, I let you sleep on my couch after one date and you're already shopping real estate?" He chuckled too. "No rush. Just putting it out there. I haven't felt this grounded in a long time. And I think it has more to do with who I've been spending time with than where I've been parking my car. That did something to me. Something real." "Well," I said, "if you're serious about coming back, you better bring good tools. I'm not sharing my torque wrench." "I'll bring a full set," he replied, "and beer." We stayed on the phone another hour, talking about nothing and everything. When I finally hung up, I sat in the dark for a while, the TV now just a black screen. I felt something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. Hope. Eli came back on a Thursday. I was in the garage when I heard the familiar growl of the Chevelle pulling into the driveway. I didn't run out like a dog waiting for its owner, but I was halfway down the steps before I realized I hadn't even set my wrench down. He stepped out of the car in a black tee, hair a little messier than usual, a travel mug in one hand. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at me with this quiet, crooked smile like he'd been holding on to it the entire drive from Georgia. "You look tired," I said, standing at the bottom of the steps. "I am," he said, "but you're a hell of a finish line." That hit harder than I expected. We didn't waste time. He dropped his bag inside, then followed me straight back to the garage, like we were picking up exactly where we left off. The S13 was technically finished, but we found little things to fiddle with, adjusting the COI levers, rewiring a gauge, debating whether to repaint the hood. The sun dipped low, casting a deep orange across the concrete floor. Eli was under the car, tightening a bolt. When he asked, "Still glad I came back?" I knelt beside the jack stand, looked down at him. "Yeah." "More than I thought I'd be." He slid out and looked at me, wiping his hands on a rag. "Because of the car, or because of you, dumbass?" He laughed. "Just checking." That night, we didn't go out, didn't grab beers. We stayed in, sat on the couch, watched a movie neither of us really followed. At some point, I rested my hand on his thigh without thinking. He placed his on top of mine, no hesitation this time. When we finally kissed again, it wasn't like that night in the Chevelle. It wasn't charged with confusion or what-ifs. It was slower, warmer, familiar. Afterward, we lay there, my head resting against his chest. The movie long forgotten. "I'm not great at this kind of stuff," he murmured into my hair. "What? Being hot and vaguely mysterious?" "You're nailing it," he chuckled. "No, I mean this. Being with someone. Letting myself want something that doesn't come with instructions." I looked up at him. "We'll figure it out." "Yeah?" "Yeah. Just treat me like a project car. You don't have to know everything on day one. You just gotta want to keep showing up." He stared at me for a second, then leaned down and kissed my forehead. "Then I'm all in." 3 months later, we were at another car meet. Same half-abandoned strip mall, same Florida heat, different vibe. Eli had finally caved and bought an old Datsun 280Z. Needed work, but the bones were good. We'd spent more late nights under that hood than I could count, and now it sat gleaming under the sun, his hand-painted valve cover on full display. People came over to ask about the build, and we took turns answering questions, passing tools, making each other laugh with quiet jabs and shared glances. Nobody asked about us. Nobody needed to. I caught Eli watching me while I was mid-sentence with another guy, just watching, like he forgot where he was. Later, I nudged him in the ribs and asked, "What?" He shrugged, grinning. Still figuring out how I pulled this off. I rolled my eyes. "Pulled me off? You showed up with COI lovers and a shy smile. I was toast." He laughed, leaned in and kissed my temple. Quick, soft, not trying to prove anything. After the meet, we hit one of those old coastal roads, top down on the Chevelle, wind whipping past us, that low, constant engine hum making everything feel steady. Solid. Eli rested his hand on my knee the whole ride. It wasn't a statement. It didn't need to be. We didn't talk about labels. We didn't need to explain it to anyone. The people who mattered could see it in the way we looked at each other, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something to fall apart. I felt like I was cruising in gear, the road ahead open, smooth, and ours to take. Just two 30-year-old guys who found each other over spark plugs and busted knuckles, and realized maybe love isn't some huge dramatic twist. Sometimes it's just a slow build. A few late nights, a steady hand on your knee, and someone who shows up again and again, even when the work is messy.